Very early in the week in bike, I joked that Phil Gaiman, having won the first stage at Tour San Luis, should retire undefeated, going out at the top of the sport. In a recent Velo News diary, Gaiman announced that he'd be riding on the US circuit next year with Optum. He seems to be handling the downgrade pretty well, citing not enough time to make contacts in the right places as part of the reason. And that's not abnormal. Development in a lot of professions is based on establishing a network of contacts who know you and respect your skills and abilities, share a rapport with you, have similar values. That is, until you read Liwei Westra's blog post about how Valentin Iglinski was only hired by Astana on a wager because his brother had won a race. Is this a real sport? You might think Westra would face trouble for making his employer look like a corrupt Central European caricature, but one, facts not really in dispute, and two, Astana's probably pretty psyched to have Westra publicly putting space between the team and the Iglinski brothers. I mean, was anyone really surprised that just one day after the biggest race in Kazakhstan, the Tour Almaty, which Astana's Alexei Luksenko won, Maxim Iglinski rescinded his request for a B-sample analysis, thus causing the Astana team to be suspended under the rules of the MPCC? And was anyone really surprised when the UCI announced they might be fining Astana for following these stricter anti-doping regulations? I mean, God forbid anybody missed the Tour of Beijing. Is this a real sport? World Tour license requests are in and only 17 of the 18 spots have been filled. Never mind that 16 is probably a better number of top-flight teams in the sport. The big question is, where is Team Alonso? How many years now are we into Formula One star watch? How much longer are we going to keep taking his promises seriously? I mean, doesn't anyone remember Team Pegasus? Team Coast? Probably a good idea if he just never gets around to it. Cycling's l'enfant terrible, Oleg Tinkov, has announced a €250,000 bonus for all of the top 4 Grand Tour riders if they do each of the 3 Grand Tours next season. We established in episode 31 that Tinkov is actually Emperor Palpatine, so it should come as no surprise, but...
It's a trap!
I mean, Froome barely raced at the Tour de France, and Contador still beat him easily at the Vuelta. Nairo Quintana was dominant at the Giro, and he was leading the Vuelta when he crashed out, but all of that advantage over Contador was based off the team time trial. Vincenzo Nibali has won and podiumed in same-year Grand Tours twice, but each of those wins came against relatively weak fields. Alberto Contador, meanwhile, did half of this year's Tour de France, had a pretty grisly crash, and still recovered to trounce everybody at the Vuelta. My guess is that Tinkoff is just wagering his rider is the better at recovering between Grand Tours, and dressing it up as some sort of promotional showmanship. The rather relaxed Giro course announced earlier this week certainly plays into his favor. Don't get me wrong, I really like the idea of seeing the top competitors go head-to-head against each other more often. Though I do question what sports garment director John Fodders is watching, where the best athletes compete against each other all year in the biggest same events. I mean, each NFL team only plays about half the other teams in the league in a given season, but there's a longer rant than that, so I'll stop there. I just think 3-week Grand Tours is kind of mentally and physically excessive to expect of one rider in a single season. Didn't we have somebody that was trying to shorten the Grand Tours? Whatever happened to that guy? Alright, he got fired. Is this a real sport? Women's cycling. I have no news. I mean, mostly because I'm trying to hold off on transfer rumors and cyclocross results until next week, but still, you'd think I'd have something. Is this a real... Actually, no, that is kind of like a real sport, isn't it? What I might do in Tinkoff's shoes is designate a €1 million prize series for women. Yes, there is already the World Cup, but it's like a zillion races long, plus there aren't any events in July, which is the only time most people are paying any attention to cycling. I'd make it super simple with just 3 events. Probably Strade Bianca, the Women's Tour of Flanders, and La Course, because they're the most visually striking and probably have the best chance of using existing infrastructure to broadcast the actual event. Of course, the UCI probably wouldn't like that because they've already got the season-long rankings, and then the World Cup, and then the World Championships to determine the best overall women's rider. I mean, God forbid somebody create for women a simple, accessible prize trophy. Just chaos, right? Is this a real... A quick note on the retirement of Andy Schleck, quite possibly the worst kept secret in cycling this week, and arguably for the past few seasons. I don't comment much on junior and under 23 racing because rider development is kinda just that, development. Results can be nice, but cycling's hard, and building good habits and a mentality that can respond to setbacks is far more important than just anointing the next Eddie Merckx. Sure, Andy's had more than his fair share of problems, but it's hard to argue that, say, Cadel Evans hasn't. That Schleck's retiring in relative ignominy while Evans is going out at a race that bears his own name might have a lot to do with the fact that one was lauded as the next Laurent Fignon at an age when the other was scrambling for contracts as a mountain biker from the wrong side of the planet. Finally, sorry for being a little late this week. I had some other complications in my schedule. But despite not racing, I will still be at Cross of the North this week, so if you're in the Fort Collins or Loveland area, feel free to stop by and say hi. I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that was the week in bike.